Welcome into Pucknology pregame. Hey, another show. But we promise you this is the last one until the puck drops. We're gonna, touch on the last little details and what's the latest news here. It's probably not gonna be a long show today because we've had a lot of shows running up to this. We're really excited, and we know pretty much all you out in Sharks Land are excited as well. With that, hold on one second. Sorry, I heard myself feeding back. With that, I'll introduce my cohort here, Mr. Ian Reed.
Hey everybody, how you doing today? Getting ready for Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final, which still feels surreal to say.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like we're used to it being someone else's turn. It's like, hey, it's finally our turn to watch our team.
Yeah,
it's kind of unreal. So I mean, leading up to the game here, and we've talked about this series so many different ways. But I guess if you had to pick one or two keys to the series, not like we've done this before, but hey, let's do it one more time. Pick one or two keys. What do you think they are?
I think the first and the big key is going to be special teams. I think that this is these teams are so similar and they have kind of like the same makeup. And so if you think that, you have your Pavelski, jumbo, couture hurdle power play line, and with Burns, you think that's dangerous. Well, they can counter with the Crosby, Malkin, Kessel, Letang. It's silly. Like, it's just, so special teams is going to be a big factor. I think the other big factor is neutral zone play. I think that the Sharks can exploit the neutral zone play of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I think that's going to be a big key to them winning the series.
Yeah, I agree. On both accounts, I think really a lot of it just comes down to how they can contain the top three lines of the Penguins. Like if that one of them starts running a rough shot, I think the Sharks have a really tough time competing. But yeah, I think I want to say special teams. I think it's not going to be as big of a difference as some people think, but watch me be completely wrong on that one. I think it really comes down to being able to contain that third line, because top line, if we're matching strength on strength, I like the chances of the Thornton line to at least win that battle 50-50 or better. Second line, Couture, very strong, very, very good defensively, good at driving possession. Donskoy there with him. And then, the third line, I don't think I've seen the lines today and who skated together, but I imagine it's going to look very similar to previous games. So it's that the big matchup to me is that Kessel line versus the third line on the Sharks. And that's going to be, I think that's going to be the key matchup really of the whole series, is how can they play against, and also the second, like after the first shutdown deep pair, how well does Burns and Martin, and hopefully not too much Dylan and Pollock out there, but how do those pairs fare versus the third line?
Yeah, that's going to be huge too. But again, it's like I said yesterday. I think like every time like someone makes an excuse, like or not even an excuse, an argument is why Pittsburgh or San Jose can win this series. It's my mind immediately just kind of flips and says, well, but this is also the same. Like, so you mentioned like Pollock and Dylan, and I don't like Ian Cole and Justin Schultz together anymore. I think Trevor Daley coming back to this series is incredibly optimistic. I don't expect to see him at all. So that it's not like Penguins have like a superior third pair, and I would even probably give our second pair. I'd take our second pair over there. So
honestly, top to bottom, I like our defense better. Like I think they win like the matchup, or they win. If we're talking compare first lines, I think our first line is actually better. I mean, if you just look at the production in the playoffs, their second line I think has an edge over ours by a small amount. Then their third line definitely has an edge over our third line. Fourth lines, I think it's close to a wash. Deep pair to deep pair, 1-1, 2-2, 3-3. I think the Sharks are better on almost every one of those, either as a push or they're a little bit better. And then goaltending, I really like the Sharks' situation in net, because you have an unquestioned starter, and behind that unquestioned starter, you have another guy who's rock solid, who for whatever reason, injury or a bad game or whatever it is, Reimer can step in there and be a big stopper for them. And if the Penguins, Murray's been great, been shaky at times. His coach doesn't seem to have complete confidence in him. And that's, that might affect him. That might affect if he has a bad game. Do they overreact and put Marc-Andre Fleury back in again? If they do, I would be very, very happy because that's good for the Sharks.
And I can't help but wonder, like, when you mentioned Marc-Andre Fleury and just how, it seems like every time, like, even Murray even just a little bit of a slip, it's automatically, it's like, oh, is Fleury coming in? Is Fleury coming in? And I kind of wonder if that's like a little bit of ownership, maybe pushing that button, because this is a guy who's making $6 million, like almost $6 million a year to play goal. So,
yeah. But I mean, the thing about Marc-Andre, I don't get the love of him at all, or how he's making what he's making.
Yemi East. Because
really, like, when we had Matt Salmons on here, he pointed out since their cup run, I believe it was 7 or 8 years ago now, since their cup run, he pulled up Marc-Andre Fleury's playoff stats, and he's like saving it like an 89% clip, just awful. Like that's not playoff caliber numbers. That's below average. Like league average in the playoffs is somewhere around 92-93%. So being at 89%, that's abysmal.
That's brutal.
Yeah, so I would love nothing more than to see them put in Marc-Andre Fleury, because that goes to shaking the confidence and the relationship between them and Matt Murray. And again, I don't wish anything bad on him, but as a Sharks fan, I absolutely want to see unrest and dysfunction in that goaltending situation.
Absolutely.
And it's right for it. It's completely right for it, and that could be a big factor in the series if they start second guessing themselves. They could screw themselves over, and I am completely in favor of that. Just I absolutely am in favor of that.
No, absolutely.
So getting back to special teams, it's worth mentioning. There was an article on Fear the Fin recently about this, and I've seen other talk about this, but the Penguins also have a really good penalty kill unit, and unlike the Blues, they're more aggressive. So they're going to come after the Sharks more than the Blues did. They're not going to be a stationary. They're going to be attacking the puck more. Do you think how many do you think it's going to take the Sharks a game or two to adjust to that style?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I think that but again though, I feel like with the way they move the puck around, I mean, the Sharks could still exploit it. It's going to be tough because I feel like the Penguins, for the teams they've played, they've never really played. The Sharks have played defensive-minded teams all the way to the final, and I feel like Pittsburgh hasn't done the same. So I don't know if it's going to be the Sharks needing to make adjustments off the hop, and maybe that's just me being a homer, but
yeah, it's hard to say because really. I mean, there's going to be that feeling out game. I mean, they had it against the Blues. It was very clear. A lot of that was just kind of trying to figure each other out. They didn't really have that with the Preds. The Preds, they jumped right in and they smacked them around in game one. The Kings, of course, they didn't need that because they know the Kings better than the Kings know themselves. Like
pretty much,
there are no secrets between the Sharks and the Kings. So I'm curious to see. Yeah, like I think this first game, there's probably going to be a lot more craziness. I think there'll be more feeling out, but there might be more crazy plays that you won't see in the series as they tighten up and get to know each other a little better. Because these teams only see each other twice a year, and it's always one or the other is always on a long road trip usually, and just hoping that they win 4 out of 6 or whatever their current road swing is. And the amount of preparation that goes into that individual game, maybe a half day to a day's worth at most from the team that's on the road, because they just logistically they can't do that. So it's gonna be a different animal than those regular season matchups. I don't think you can read very much into how historically the two have played each other, because I think, although I guess the Sharks having a lot of success against them in Pittsburgh on long road swings doesn't bode poorly for the Sharks though.
No, I mean, it's so hard because it's like, I think the amount of scouting that obviously would go into a Stanley Cup final is so much more different than, a one-off game in the regular season where, I don't think that you're going to be watching it a ton of tape in the regular season to see what each team, you know what I mean? Like you're playing twice, so you're going to spend more time focusing on your, your division and conference rivals that you're going to play more often. So it'll be interesting to see how Pittsburgh reacts at home with the extra time to actually, do some homework in the scouting department on the Sharks, and vice versa, the Sharks for the Penguins.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, the preparation levels can be different, and the Sharks have had really at least an extra full day of prep. Mm-hmm. Granted, although it could, they didn't know who it was going to be, but you figure they were polling and researching both teams, and then watching that game. And then the second they knew who it was going to be, they shifted their focus. But they have a jump start. The Penguins, I assume they haven't. They might have had some pre-scouts looking at the Sharks, but they probably didn't have, the full attention of the coaching staff because they had to win that game.
Win game 7.
So, yeah, I think in a lot of ways the Sharks had a jump there because their coaches were on at that moment. They were, they're fresher. They're ready to start showing the players film and all that. And
right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was hard to tell right up till the end there. I was thinking it was going to be Tampa until that last game where Tampa they laid an egg. Like, I believe it was 14 shots all game long or something ridiculous like that. It was, it was awful. My manager. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, especially with Stamkos drawing back into the lineup, you'd think you'd get more shots, but.
Yeah, my manager at work's a big Pens fan, and he's like, the Pens are going to handle the Sharks. I'm like, you realize the Sharks are going to get more than 14 shots on goal, right? Like, they're not going to – I don't know what the season low is, but I'm pretty sure it's something like 18, 19. And those, I think even the games where they've had really low shot counts, it wasn't because it was a blowout, just because lots of blocking was going on.
Right.
And because I don't even think Tampa wasn't even that high in shot attempts either. So it wasn't even like they were
Pittsburgh
a lot.
Massively that whole series rather.
Yeah, exactly. Pittsburgh just owned them in puck possession and wore them down, which is again why I always tout puck possession numbers, because usually the winners of those battles tend to go on and score, and that was really the key for Pittsburgh. Is in a lot of ways Tampa I think should have had them. Tampa had them on the ropes, and just they diminished a lot. I mean, they got worse in possession as the series went on. So, but I don't expect the Sharks to look like that. I think they've always been a strong possession team, and I think they're going to be a strong possession team. They have this is one of their best possession. If you measure all the metrics, this is their best possession post season ever, and they're like top 10. I think actually not top 10. Sorry, they are a top 2 team in the last 10 years. And on top of that, the top 10 teams that in possession of the last 10 years, 2 of the 10 won the Stanley Cup. So that's not some bad company to be in. Nope. A lot of very good teams. And the other fun thing, I was again looking at Fear the Fin earlier, but this is the first year where the Sharks have actually been in a positive on the PDO, aka the luck stat.
The luck stat.
So this is the first time they've ever really not only been good, but also been lucky to go with that good. Because when it's always been one thing or another with these runs, right? It's always been like either their goaltending's lacking, or their scoring's lacking, or they can't get a bounce to save their lives. It's always been something, right? Whether it's skill, whether it's luck. It was they've never kind of had everything go right at once, because even the best teams need some good bounces to go on and win the cup. That's how it goes, right? The Boston Bruins, they had a lot of things on their run 5 years ago where just things kind of just worked out really well for them in so many different ways, and that's finally what the Sharks seem to have going for them on top of playing well.
Yeah, it's goaltending's been such a difference this year. I think has been the biggest, most notable difference to me has been goaltending. Antti Niemi had a couple of good years here, but it just always seemed like he'd always let in either just the soft deflating goal that just seemed to just undo, and then and then you have to. You have to also point at the Sharks like the rest of them, because they would let that completely undo them.
Yeah, definitely. And Jones has had a couple softies, but there's going to be a few. Every contender lets in a few, but he hasn't, he's, whenever he's had a bad moment, he's bounced back from it. Like he has never let it turn into just kind of a downward spiral, which was very common with Niemi, very common with Nabi. I love Nabi, but he definitely could get into a funk and
and then the beach ball would just bounce in.
Yeah, so that's the thing, and that's also very true about the Sharks team as well, is that after bad games, they've almost all, with a few like maybe one exception of the Nashville game, games 3 and 4, they've always bounced back with a strong effort after a loss. Like the team has been really good at bouncing back when they've, I've cited the stat several times. They've had 6 games they've gone 0-4 on the power play. The next 6 games after that, they scored a combined 10 goals in 6 games. So the power play has a tendency, when it has a bad outing, it has a tendency to bounce right back and get on track. And, they average nearly 2 goals a game on the power play after going 0-4. So I think this team is very resilient, and that is the thing. They just keep coming and coming and coming. They don't give up. I mean, they also have been lucky too, because they've, when they needed the bounces, they've gotten some bounces, but they keep trying. They don't go, oh, it's not working, we need to start playing hero puck, or do, just trust the process. Keep going, keep pushing, keep doing, have good shifts, and eventually you'll get rewarded for it.
No, I completely agree. It's funny. It always makes me laugh too, because the Stanley Cup final is this is something you would have called in 2009, 2010. now you finally get it when no one would have called it at the start of the season. It just feels oh, Sharks versus Pittsburgh. This is something that you would have this is what all the guys would have prognosticated in 2010. But now it's no one would have called it, and I find that amusing.
Yeah, and I mean, even the most enthusiastic among Sharks fans, very few were saying, yeah, this is the year. Because we're this team has potential, but no one's yeah, this team looks like a definite cup. And even in the February, March, we're yeah, this looks like a team that will be in the playoffs, win maybe a round, but we're just not buying them as Stanley Cup, a Stanley Cup team.
No,
we saw the signs were there early, but I mean, between all the years of missteps and history, we're not gonna start calling it that until we see. You got to next. Okay, if let's say they win the cup this year, and next year they have a very similar season, maybe a little more even throughout, but they're in the similar spot come March. I think we'll buy them a lot more as a Stanley Cup contender, because we've seen them do it.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. What else should we talk about? We should talk about some of the other goings on, since there's been Gary Bettman spoke today, and with all the media stuff going on. So here's some headlines, and you can tell me what you think. First, I'll start it off with this. The NHL, Team Russia named Slava Voinov to their roster, and the NHL basically said, nope, not happening. Their justification is that he's still serving an indefinite suspension from the National Hockey League, and it's a National Hockey League event. So no Slava Voinov for Russia.
I like that move by the NHL. Are they waiting on the legal proceedings to wrap up? Is that what the indefinite suspension is waiting on?
I mean, he left for Russia, so they'd have to. I think they just left it alone. I think that if he came back, if he wanted to come back, then I think they would revisit it for reinstatement. But for now, instead of getting deported, he basically just decided to go home to Russia himself.
Yeah, well, see ya, scumbag.
Gary Bettman says that the NHL has no interest in sending players to the Olympics if they have to pay the expenses themselves, as they already assume all the risk. In previous years, the IOC would pay for travel and insurance, and the IIHF doesn't want to do that this year. So, so the NHL says that's a deal breaker for them, and I don't blame them.
Yeah, and that's good also, because the NHL is taking the brunt of it, not forcing the players to be the bad guys, and because they want to play for their country, but if one of them says, "Well, I'm not doing that," oh, they're unpatriotic, all the usual, especially if it's someone with a big target on their back who's
absolutely
like Ovechkin, or somebody who's a big player.
Well, we lost in in 20 what was it, 14 was the last Olympics.
Yep.
The Islanders lost John Tavares for the season because of an injury sustained at the Olympics. So I could understand why the NHL doesn't want to, pay all the insurance and everything on top of that,
Yeah,
on top of
exactly.
just sending them. Like they're right; they absolutely assume all the risk.
And props to the NHL, though. I'm saying they did something right because they didn't make the players be the ones to object. Because
Absolutely.
because the NHL is good at being the bad guy, anyways. And
Although
I know they're doing it for selfish reasons too, but it's good that they're doing it and not
I'm
forcing
I'll
players.
be surprised but you got to wonder if some of these guys are gonna, like, some of them will go anyway. Like, Ovechkin has been pretty, stated on multiple occasions that if the NHL doesn't go, he's going. So
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see who does that. Last little bit of news on the expansion front. Although they haven't made any official announcement about expansion, they've said that originally the 25%, you had to basically expose 25% of your salary to the expansion draft. They've taken that off the table now, so it's just going to be no movement clauses can be protected, and you can't, you have to protect so many players, and any player that's played under 2 years is a-okay.
So that means one of our off-season shows upcoming, we'll have to talk about. We'll have to take the number of players and talk through who you'd want to protect and who you'd be willing to expose. Arlo.
I guess the thing was they were worried that in order that players would have to re-sign players that they didn't really want, just to be able to have 25% of their cap to expose. So like a guy with an expiring contract in 2017, like for instance the Sharks, re-signing Marleau and then immediately exposing him to the expansion draft just so that they can make so they can put 25% of their cap there without losing anyone that they want to keep. So it's going to be interesting. I think it's a good call. I think that there's enough. Look at Vegas and Quebec, although I think it's just Vegas at this point. They're going to get some really good players out of this expansion draft. This is going to be one of the best starting expansions for, I think, in ever, as far as the way they've changed the rules. So they're going to be fine. I understand that they want them to be competitive off the hop, but you can't just, you can't do that at the expense of, too much at the expense of other teams, obviously.
Yeah. So on the general topic, before we move on, real quick, there's been a lot of talk I've seen from some of the Nashville guys I'm following now from last series. I think a lot of them think Shea Weber might get left exposed. Like, what do you think of that?
That seems crazy to me, but it wouldn't surprise me. I just can't believe that Shea Weber doesn't have a no movement clause, because I'm pretty sure no movement clauses have to be protected.
Oh, okay. I wasn't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really.
Has no clause. He has no trade, no move. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, look, Nashville's an internal cap team. They had to sign that offer sheet because at the time, they're really kind of, raked over the coals there. They had to sign that offer sheet because they couldn't lose them for nothing at the time. They didn't know that, you'd have Roman Josi and Ryan Ellis and all these other guys, Ekholm basically be able to step up Seth Jones when they had him. I mean, it's just, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, that he's making almost $8 million. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy how much he's making. I think that's why I tend to think, and these are people, they're not just general fans. They're people who follow the team pretty closely. So I think, yeah, he might be one of the guys left exposed. It seems like a reasonable hypothesis. Anyways, enough on that. We will touch a lot on this in the off season. What, you have another headline for us?
I think I'm all headlined out. I'm just kind of scanning quickly to see if there's anything else. Obviously, condolences to Justin Braun.
Yeah, agreed. That's sad. For those who didn't hear, I believe his father-in-law passed away in the last 24 hours. And yeah, I guess he has decided he will play, but yeah, I hope. Yeah, I mean, he's going to be doing it with a heavy heart, and yeah, our thoughts are with him on that.
Yeah, that's basically it for headlines.
Headlines, and it feels like we're on doing PTI or something like that from. We should have a little timer countdown. I hate
everything.
I hate everything. Everyone, fire everyone. Checking out the Google chat here to see if anyone's saying anything. I know Slushy's probably got a few things to say down here. I mean, when does Slushy not have something to say?
He said he still hasn't eaten the bag of dicks he sent him. I told me she'd get on it.
Oh yes, yeah. Seriously, don't talk to me about hairlines. Yeah, I don't even want to hear it. So couple odds and ends. I know a number of people are at the tank for the watch party. I will be throwing a little shindig here, so I will be home for the night. But I believe if you're out there at the tank, AJ will be there, Gentry will be there. Eric unfortunately has to work tonight, so he will not be there. You could probably also find Rocket Backhander. I know her and AJ are already down at San Pedro Square getting all the free stuff and hanging out with CUDA players. If you've been following on Twitter, there's a bunch of hubbub going on there. So yeah, there's that. The watch party sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So another little thing is this morning, there is a video of this. It's not there's a lot of filler, and it's not necessarily the most interesting watch end to end, but there is a video. If you look at, there's a playlist on our channel here called I forget what it is, Behind the Nology or whatever I named it, but it's kind of some behind the scenes stuff. They're not listed in our regular video feed because they're not necessarily really super interesting things that we want to put out there in the regular feed, but some behind the scenes stuff. We had an interview this morning with KPIX. I guess they're doing a little 1 to 2 minute bit on Pucknology and what's going on there. So they came in to Eric's house this morning, set up a camera, interviewed him, interviewed some of us, and talked about, the show here, what we've been doing, our backgrounds, and, what we're trying to do here. So keep an eye out for that. If we can find a video clip online once it goes, we will probably post it on our Twitter many, many times.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, there's a little 45-minute video there where we just kind of did a mock show to try and do something for the camera. We had a little interview deal thing. So, if you're a fanatic for the show, check that out. It's kind of some fun stuff, and we're being goofy. We're, doing our thing and all that. So that's definitely worth checking out. Yeah, it was really cool. Like, wow, getting some attention here. And on that subject, if you're new here, hit the nice little subscribe button. We do a lot of content. We're trying to get a lot of guests on, and we tentatively have a notable guest tonight. It is not for sure, but I will not say a name, but I will say if it works out, it's someone you will want to see as a Sharks fan. So make sure to tune in tonight. We're fingers crossed that works out, but we may have a very, very cool guest on tonight.
And just on that note, like if we have a guest, then obviously, the show's going to be long enough. We're probably not going to do call-ins. If we don't have a guest, we'll decide when we get there. So don't bug me now about, are we going to do call-ins tonight? We'll see. If we have a guest, then obviously that's going to eat, hopefully, a good portion of the show, and then just the usual stuff. So maybe.
Yep, agreed. And on the subject of guests, also, we have a lot of potential guests in the works. We have a couple commitments where we don't have time.
Right.
So some pretty notable guests, some less notable ones, but cool ones just the same. Like we're gonna have a lot of, because there's gonna be so many shows and time, time we have to fill coming up, and we can only say the same thing so many different times, so many different ways. We're going to have plenty of things to react to and talk ourselves, but we're trying to take advantage of this opportunity right now. Since the Sharks have the big stage, we're getting way more shots at getting guests on here. So keep an eye out. There's going to be a lot of good stuff. I'll probably also be cutting excerpts of those guests. So, if you want to just watch just the interview rather than watch the whole show every time, right, I'll probably try and put some of those and they'll be in the playlist. We have little mini chomps or whatever I called that playlist as well. Will be some of the cut interviews or cut segments where it's a little easier to catch up on what happened, especially when we have a 3-hour show. It's very hard to watch the whole thing. So There's that. Anything else we should touch on here?
I just have a question. If KPX gives us 2 minutes, is that still more than they'll give the Sharks? Like, did we steal the Sharks' thunder?
I don't know, but I
I'm
imagine
just a smart ass.
they're gonna give the Sharks some time.
I know, I'm just being a smart ass.
Yeah, I think the funniest thing this morning was so they asked he asked Eric kind of a surprise question was does part of you kind of wish the Warriors
Oh,
weren't doing
that
their
stupid
thing
thing.
because so the Sharks have the stage to themselves and like it's like a couple of us kind of sheepishly like nothing against the Warriors, but we kind of do wish it would it is what it is. It's funny though. It's like the best time the Sharks have ever had, and they still don't get the stage to themselves.
No,
It's
especially if the
funny.
Warriors win, it'll be the greatest team of all time.
Yeah, but no, we're happy for the Warriors. It's cool because, and the Sharks will still get their love. Like they are getting more love than they've ever gotten on
Yeah.
local media. Like I've heard way more interviews, way more like just talking about the Sharks because most Sharks coverage in the area has usually been interviews. Very little like, hey, let's sit down and talk about this Sharks topic with two regular hosts. We do that here all the time, but in terms of local media, not very often. So Sharks have been getting some more love. We should acknowledge that.
Yeah. I was just being a jerk. Like I've noticed a lot more, like you said, just in even my social media feed. I've noticed a lot more, Sharks getting a little more attention. Obviously, I mean, look, the Warriors are the Warriors. I mean, the Sharks, and all of us, we know our lot in life at this point. Like, it is what it is. Nothing's going to change it overnight. It wasn't like suddenly the Sharks are in the finals and who cares about Game 7? Like, that's what draws eyeballs. And
yeah,
it
exactly.
is what it is.
And we understand that in the U.S. generally hockey comes after basketball. I mean, there's the big three, and then number 4 is the NHL. But unfortunately, the NHL here is not as popular as we'd like. We love the NHL more than the general populace does. So it is, I hate to say it again, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
By the way, if as long as I'm doing these, giving these terrible platitudes, like it is what it is. Do you know that tonight is the biggest game in Sharks history, Ian?
Yes, as will the next game and the game after that and the game after that. They just keep getting bigger.
We just need like an anagram for that or whatever. Yeah. Biggest game in Sharks history. So Bigish.
This is huge. I mean, no matter what happens here, I mean, this has been a hell of a ride. Obviously, I want the Sharks to win, but if the Sharks don't, for some reason, pull it out, and we have to deal with a year of NBC, they're always going to love Crosby anyway. But you know what? My advice to everyone is to just enjoy this, regardless of how it goes out. Enjoy the ride because it took us 25 years to get here, and as we've seen with some teams, it can take a lot longer to get back. So, you know what? Just enjoy it. Enjoy it because you don't know when the Sharks are going to be here again. And that's not me being negative. That's just realistic. So if you spend the whole time being angry because Pollock's getting played over DeMello and blah, 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 then you're going to miss out. And you're going to, once it's over, either way it ends, you're going to regret it.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, sentiments I'm seeing in the chat and on Twitter is that everyone's very nervous and understandably so. Like this is the big moment. Part of me is like, what if the Sharks lose tonight? What if the Sharks come back home 0-2? Then they have a chance. Just there's a lot of, and the nerves will maybe settle out once we've had a game or two and we get into this. And you know what? They could lose tonight, but they could win. I mean, I believe that even if they lose tonight, they could win in a couple days. Like,
absolutely,
it's gonna be like whatever happens. Try not to overreact to it. Like. If they win tonight, don't go, oh, this is in the bag. If they lose tonight, don't go, oh, gosh, same old Sharks, because I have put a moratorium on that, by the way. There is no same old Sharks anymore, at least not this year. But like Ian said, try to enjoy it, because that's the thing is, like, we get so caught up in, what we're expecting, and, just try to enjoy some of this, because it's been a fun ride, and try to enjoy the ride, because you don't want to look back if the Sharks win it all. You don't look back and go like, I spent the entire playoffs like gripping and stuff. So
waiting for them to fail.
Yep. All right then. Anything else? Any last words before we get out of here?
I have
that
nothing.
That sounds a little morbid, actually. But
go Sharks. I mean, what else is there to say? Go Sharks.
Go Sharks. I don't know if you are familiar with the local radio thing here, but Ralph Barbieri and his Go Sharks. That
nice.
whole thing.
I have
Yeah.
no idea.
Yeah, no, that's a common drop on local radio here. Is yeah, we did have one longtime host that was a pretty big Sharks fan who incidentally got fired, and it wasn't for talking about Sharks, oddly enough. Anyway, with that, I think let's wrap it up. Slushy says, I can tell it's almost game time because Slushy's saying in the chat his towel is on his head.
Hi.
Vince G, hashtag rally hairline. Thank you very much. Yeah, the black hat in the second round. I can have the rally hairline in the finals here. There we go. See if that one takes on a life of its own, as jokes tend to do on the show. I prefer my rally racing stripe here, though. I get the Joe Thornton racing stripe. So, anyways, with that, I think we will wrap up here. You can follow me on Twitter at ChrisJWS. You can follow him on Twitter at iReadPucknology. He is Ian Reed. He's our director of content for Pucknology.net. Check out the site as well. There's all kinds of lovely articles covering anything you could ever want to know about hockey. We post video highlights on there, all kinds of good stuff, every bit of entertainment, all the stuff for your Sharks needs. I'm seeing more rally hairlines now in the in the chat. That's awesome.
I'm done with junior hockey. It's all Sharks now.
All Sharks all the time. And then, when the off season comes around, we will have more content on After Dark and on the site as well. We'll be following all the off season stuff. We'll be in here. So with that, go Sharks. Let's see them bring home game one. If you're at the tank at the party, be sure to let some of the guys know I don't know who's going to be on After Dark tonight, but let them know. We'll probably want to see if we can hear from someone who's there about how it was. Tune in tonight for Pucknology After Dark. Like I said, we have a guest that's potentially locked in, has not confirmed, but you will want to see them. If it comes through, you will want to see them. So either way, tune in. It's a lovely time. We will break down the game as best we can from our fan perspective here. We'll have a lot of fun as always. So with that,
just in one last little bit of news.
Sure.
Board of Governors meeting is going to meet in Las Vegas on the 22nd. That is probably where expansion will be decided.
Yep. You think that's on that topic before we wrap up here, but do you think that'll be announced like around the time of the Vegas Awards at the end of the season, or?
Makes perfect sense to me. That's when you would announce it.
Seems like the right timing, and
yeah, because they have to announce it before July 1st because teams are obviously going to have to make some decisions based on, they need to be able to plan ahead and they don't want to sign somebody to a good deal and then lose them to expansion draft. So they have to have it decided before July 1. I'm not sure when the NHL awards are, but it would seem like the most logical place to announce it.
It would be perfect because okay. But yeah, we'll talk a lot more about that in the coming weeks. So let's get out of here. So Slushy just saying real quick, rally pit or finish pit so bad, rally hairline. So okay, yeah, we'll just sign off with that. Go Sharks, rally hairline. Be safe, everyone. Have a good time watching tonight, and we'll see you later.